All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are unpacking a truly fascinating leap in how artificial intelligence handles massive, complex projects. We're looking really closely at Anthropic's Claude code and specifically a major breakthrough called dynamic workflows. To put it in plain English, we're exploring how Claude can now essentially step into the role of a manager. It can automatically draw up an AI org chart and literally hire its very own team of specialized agents on the fly to get a specific job done. Now, you might be thinking this is just a minor technical upgrade, but it's actually a fundamental shift in how we're going to manage digital labor in the near future. It's a huge pivot from our traditional AI interactions, and honestly, the mechanics behind it are incredibly clever. So, to really get why this is such a game changer, we have to start with the core problem. Think about this for a second. Why is it that single AI agents completely struggle when you hand them massive, highly parallel, or adversarial projects? Up until now, the default way we've used agents is by having them plan and execute absolutely everything inside one single context window. And look, for ordinary coding or quick, simple tasks, that works perfectly fine. But the moment you stretch a single agent across a long, grueling, multi-step project, it just starts to break down. And what's really fascinating, and honestly kind of funny, is that the way a solo AI agent fails is practically identical to how a tired, overworked, overcaffeinated solo human employee fails. You can really see this when you look at the three main AI failure modes. They map so directly to human exhaustion. First up, we've got agentic laziness. If you hand an AI a 50-item security review, a single tired agent might just get to item 35, declare victory, and clock out. Next is self-preferential bias. You know how it is when you try to proofread your own writing, you miss things? Well, if you ask an agent to grade its own output against a strict rubric, it miraculously tends to love whatever it just produced. It's literally grading its own homework. And finally, there's goal drift. Over a really long sequence of turns, especially as the AI starts summarizing its memory to save space, the original constraints just quietly erode away. It flat out forgets the don't do this instruction. When we humans get tired, we cut corners, we judge our own work poorly, and we lose the thread. AI does the exact same thing. Okay, so what's the fix? The crucial takeaway here is that the cure for this solo agent fatigue isn't just waiting for a smarter, quote-unquote, better core AI model. The cure is actually pure management. Think about it. What does a good human manager do when an employee is completely overwhelmed? They don't just stand there and tell the employee to work harder, right? No, they divide the work up. They bring in new team members and give each one an isolated, focused brief. And crucially, they bring in someone entirely independent to double-check the results. That exact managerial logic is what Anthropic has encoded into this new system. They've recognized that complex AI work demands separate sub-agents, where each one gets its own fresh context window and a single crystal-clear goal. And that brings us to the formal definition of what we're unpacking in this explainer today: dynamic workflows. So, what is it? Mechanically speaking, it's a custom orchestration scaffolding, literally a small JavaScript program that Claude writes and runs entirely on the fly. We are not talking about a prepackaged, off-the-shelf template here. I want you to picture Claude arriving at a messy job site, instantly drawing up an org chart and hiring exactly what the job needs for that specific moment. Maybe it needs a dispatcher, a couple of highly specialized workers, an independent reviewer, and a panel of judges. Each digital worker gets a clean desk and a perfectly focused brief. And the best part? When the job is completely done, Claude just disbands the team. Let's contrast this with the old way of doing things so you can really see the leap here. In the past, sure, you could wire up multiple instances of Claude by hand using an agent SDK, which is basically a standard developer toolkit. But doing that gave you what we call a static workflow. Because hand-built harnesses have to account for every possible edge case a user might run into, they inevitably end up being incredibly generic and rigid. But now, thanks to models that are capable enough to reason deeply about a task before they even start it, which is a capability that shipped alongside Claude Opus 4.8, we get dynamic workflows. All it takes is asking for a workflow, or just using the trigger word ultracode, and Claude instantly generates a tailor-made harness for your exact job in that exact moment. Under the hood, the technical brilliance of this setup is how aggressively it optimizes your resources. Claude isn't just blindly spawning clones of its most expensive, most powerful self. That would cost a fortune. Instead, the workflow dynamically decides which specific AI model each subagent actually needs. So it'll smartly route the repetitive, high-volume grunt work over to a cheap, incredibly fast model. But for the steps that require deep reasoning or a final executive approval, it routes that to a powerful, high-tier model. And on top of that, these agents are running in their own isolated work trees. Think of them as completely secure digital sandboxes. This means your parallel workers aren't constantly stepping on each other's toes or overwriting each other's files. Now, this structural genius translates directly into 6 main orchestration patterns. And what's wild is how perfectly these map to standard business management techniques. First, there's classify and act, which basically operates like a switchboard, routing incoming tasks to the right specialists. Fan out and synthesize splits a massive job into tiny pieces, runs them all at the exact same time, and then merges the answers. A huge time saver. Adversarial verification acts like an independent auditor. Its only job is to aggressively attack the work against a rubric to find flaws. Then you have generate and filter, which is like a brainstorming funnel. If you want to avoid subjective scoring, you use the tournament pattern, which literally sets up a head-to-head bracket where agents compete until a winner emerges. And finally, loop until done, which iterates until the job is actually finished. These are the exact structures a competent human team lead would use to guarantee high quality. Let's actually zoom in on just one of these for a second to see how deeply logical it is, the loop until done pattern. Let's say you have a task, but you have no idea up front exactly how much work or how many passes it'll require. With the old static way, you might just blindly guess and tell the AI, do 3 passes. But here, the workflow systematically spawns an agent to do a pass, and then it strictly checks against a very specific, predefined stop condition. For example, are there absolutely 0 errors remaining? If that condition isn't met, it simply repeats. It spawns another agent to fix whatever is left. It only finishes and shuts down when the goal is definitively, undeniably achieved. Now, all this logic builds into a really unexpected revelation from the source material. Because this entire feature is built right into Claude code, it's super easy to assume it's only for software engineers. But the counterintuitive truth here is that these dynamic teams are frequently more useful for non-technical work. When you strip away the programming syntax, the absolute core competency of these workflows is handling tasks that are large-scale, highly parallel, adversarial, or intensely judgment-heavy. To put that into perspective, let's look at some of the real-world applications Anthropic highlighted. Now, yes, there is a massive engineering feat mentioned. The Bun runtime was reportedly rewritten from the Zig programming language over to Rust by breaking the job into thousands of tiny automated fixes managed by these dynamic workflows. That's huge, but look at the rest of this list. We're talking about a deep research routine that fans out thousands of searches and synthesizes a fully cited comprehensive report. Or a fact checker that isolates every single claim in a massive document and dispatches individual agents to verify them one by one. Or, and I love this one, running a root cause postmortem to figure out exactly why a company's sales dropped in March. It does this by generating independent hypotheses from different data sets and putting each one through a ruthless adversarial review. The versatility here is just off the charts. All right, we need to pause here for a second, because with all this incredible multi-agent power comes a very serious, absolutely non-negotiable responsibility. Buried in these amazing use cases is perhaps the single most critical security guardrail for anyone building AI tools that connect to the open internet, and that is the absolute necessity of quarantine. When you are running a team of autonomous agents, the specific sub-agents that are assigned to go out and read untrusted public content must be strictly, physically barred from taking high-privilege actions. Anything privileged, like touching your database, has to be handed off to a separate, clean agent that has never, ever touched the untrusted input. There's a quote from the source material that hits the nail on the head and perfectly encapsulates the stakes here. The difference between properly implementing this quarantine and just ignoring it is, quote, the difference between read the web and summarize and read a malicious web page and let it drive your database, end quote. That's a terrifying thought, right? You absolutely have to design this strict separation of duties into your dynamic workflows from the very beginning. It is not something you can just slap on as an afterthought. And that naturally brings us to a quick reality check about costs and guardrails. Anthropic is super upfront about this. Dynamic workflows burn significantly more tokens than just pinging a single agent. Think about it. A single workflow can spawn hundreds of sub-agents behind the scenes. Because of that, you must bound it deliberately. You need to set explicit token budgets, like a hard 10,000 token maximum, just to cap a runaway process so it doesn't drain your account. Also, always run small pilot tests on a tiny slice of your data before you turn a workflow loose on your entire corporate backlog. And finally, remember that orchestrating a complex team like this requires frontier-level AI intelligence to write a good harness in the first place. This tech is incredibly powerful, for sure, but it is definitely not free. Watch those budgets. So let's pull back and look at the big picture. When we step back, we can see how this completes what Anthropic envisions as a totally clean, automated ecosystem. It's essentially a three-part stack. First up, you have your skills, which basically package up the specific tools and knowledge your organization actually has. Then you have loops, which are the rules that dictate when and exactly how far you delegate tasks over time. And now the third axis is dynamic workflows. These workflows represent the temporary org chart Claude draws up inside a single run. So a workflow can call on your custom skills, be given a hard finish line by a loop, and seamlessly integrate into a highly complex, beautifully automated pipeline. Ultimately, the massive shift we're seeing today is moving away from just prompting a single isolated worker to commissioning an entire digital team. And just like any human team, it's going to deliver vastly superior results, but it's going to cost you more to run. The true skill for us as human operators going forward is going to be pure managerial judgment. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Before you summon an entire AI org chart out of thin air, ask yourself one profound question. Are you actually tackling a massive complex project that needs this much firepower? Or are you just hiring a 5-person AI committee to fix a typo?